everybody, it's Gail, and today I have this 1950s ear warmer to show you. And you may notice with the pattern photo up that the headband is wider and the texture on the yarn is a little bit different. One of these was a mistake, one of these was on purpose. So the mistake was that the pattern calls for a number 6 hook. Now this is a vintage pattern, of course. And a number 6 hook is a 4.25 millimeter. And I know this because I've just worked that many vintage patterns. However, when I was reading the pattern, I saw number 6 hook and I went, oh, I use a 6 millimeter. No. But yes, I did. I used a 6 millimeter. And the reason I didn't sort of stop and double check myself was because it's very common when you're working with a fuzzier textured yarn to maybe go up a couple of hook sizes so that it's easier to see the stitches and it's easier to get your stitches where they need to go in a pattern. Now, that's not what happened here. What happened here was I was not thinking. But the good news is I had one skein of Hobbii Boucle 100% wool. Very excited. And except for the flowers on the earpieces, I had enough to make the whole thing. So if you actually make it to the specification of the 4.25 millimeter hook, you will have enough to make all of it in the Boucle, if that's what you want. But luckily, I also had some leftover mohair. It's a mohair blend from Rowan that I originally used to make a kimono jacket from the 1930s. And so I had enough left over to use it for the flowers. And then these buttons have just been in my collection forever. They were Lamond. I don't know. The buttons you always got at Joann's, RIP. So yeah, I was able to, like, in the original pattern, they're supposed to be pearls, but I wanted something a little. I have some pearls, but they weren't quite large enough, so I went with the cute buttons. And so what's interesting about this is that this is mohair, like I said. This is Boucle. The original pattern calls for Angora. Now, if you look up Angora on the internet, if you type in Angora, what is Angora yarn, odds are you are going to be told that it is mohair. Mohair is yarn that is made by shaving Angora goats and then turning that into yarn. That's not the same thing as the Angora the pattern calls for. What the Angora the pattern calls for is hair you brush off of Angora rabbits and then spin into yarn. And they're not totally dissimilar. I don't know if the naming convention of the Angora goats is because it's meant to be a stand-in for the Angora rabbit fiber or what, but you can't generally find worsted weight mohair in my experience. If you know of a worsted weight mohair made from goats, please leave a note down in the comments. I would love to have a couple of resources for that. And the other thing is, while there are still people who are making Angora yarn from brushing their rabbits, none of the ones that I found were locally available at the time. In my experience, most yarn shops stock mohair, goat mohair. They don't stock Angora from rabbits. There are some places that do, but none of them were near me, and I've never worked with Angora from rabbits, and so I wanted to be able to, like, kind of feel it myself and get a sense of it before I bought it. And so since I couldn't do that, I got the Hobbii Boucle because I worked with Boucles enough. I'm like, yeah, it'll be a Boucle. It'll be a curly yarn that does exactly this. So that is how we got here. And this is, obviously it's a quick project. There's not a whole lot to it. There is a little sewing, but so actually the flowers and the back are all done in one piece. So you make the flower and then you join the main yarn, in this case, and you stitch around the outside for a couple of rounds to get the the sort of cap around the flower. So pretty easy, pretty quick, very cute, very warm. So glad about that. We just got out of the deep freeze from January here in Pittsburgh, and we have another one on the way, I think. So yay. Yeah. So short and sweet video for a very sweet looking project. I kind of want to make a neon one because I want to make a neon everything. But for now, this will work. I will have the pattern linked down in the basement if I cannot find it from wherever I bought it originally, and I cannot find a duplicate of it somewhere where it can be purchased. I will link it from my website, as I generally do, and I do that because Vintage Patterns, the people putting out the Vintage Patterns as PDFs, I appreciate their work, but they're not copyright protected. So, yeah, if I can't find it somewhere on the internet, I will put it somewhere on the internet. That's really going to do it for this one. As always, if you enjoy what I do here, please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, all of that fun stuff, and I will see you when I see you.